Okay, the Nadika is the 60th part of the Vara, which makes it 24 minutes long on the average, okay? Or, yeah, 24 minutes long, okay? Now, the 60th part of the Vara, the 60th part in astrology is always the smallest part of the whole. So we have the Rashi, the smallest Varga is the Shashtiamsha, the 60th. And you've all heard about the Nadiyamshas, right?
Right.
You know, the Nadiyamsha, that's when you divide each sign to 150 parts. But that's not a Vara chart. The smallest Vara chart is the 60th, the Shashtiamsha. The Nadiyamsha is just what point of the Lagna, but it's not a Vara, like a whole real Vara chart, Varga chart. Okay.
Yeah, you're confusing.
Varga chart. My tongue is really in bad shape today.
Okay.
I haven't slept in like 2 weeks, I think. So the Nadika is the 60th part of the Vara. And they're named after the Nakshatra. So in the Nadika, we're bringing together the Vara with the Nakshatra.
So the Shashtiamsha is obviously, but you're saying
it's also a 60th part. Yeah, so the 60th part's important in astrology. Now, the Nadikas are named after Nakshatra. So we're bringing together the Vara and the Nakshatra. Isn't that cool?
Mm.
Okay? Now, the first Nadika of any day is Vaishak. Okay? And the rest fall in order to the 27th Nadika, which is Swati, which is the 27th Nakshatra from Vaishak. Okay? Then the 28th Nakshatra is Jyotsna, which means light. The 29th Nakshatra is Sandhya, which means reflection or junction. And the 30th Nakshatra is Maitri, which means friendship. Okay? And then those 30 repeat from during the night, or repeat again. But again, we calculate these for Yamakoti. Okay, so 60th part of the Vara. Now, what's interesting about these, first of all, the Nadika has a similar effect as the Nakshatra, because it's named after Nakshatra, right? So it grows the event. It helps to grow the event. So if you got a bad Nakshatra, one of the ways you can make up for it is to find a good Nadika, and the Lord of the Nadika is the Lord of that Nakshatra. So if you're going okay, so if you're going to do something under the Nadika of Mag,
right,
you want K2 to be in good shape, because K2 rules Mag, right?
right.
So a good Nadika can make up for a poor Nakshatra. Okay? Now, the difference between the Nakshatra and the Nadika is the Nakshatra is really responsible for growing this whole thing. It's a whole process of growth. The Nadika, it really finally details the final result, the final outcome of everything being grown. Okay, so it's like that final thing that happens. So it's a very important thing for detailing it. Now, if the Panchanga is good and all those big things are good, and if it's a bad Nadika, that's just a bad detail. You know what I mean? That means in much of a good thing, it's bad, but it's still good. You know what I mean? That's like in a crate of apples, you got one rotten apple. Mm-hmm. A good Nadika on top of a bad Panchanga and bad Panchanga Lord is like one good apple in a bunch of vinegar. Okay? It's not going to be much good, a bunch of rotten apples. So, but it does have a say over the final outcome. And Nadikas are really interesting because okay, let me say more. If the Nadika is favorable, it'll help with the final outcome. But if the Nakshatra is unfavorable, getting to the final outcome may be so difficult that when you get to the final outcome and it's good, it's not even worth it. Or so difficult that you never get to the final outcome. Okay? Whereas if the Nakshatra is good, Nakshatra's Lord is good, you get there and you grow there quite readily. But if the Nadika is bad, your rewards at the end aren't so great. So look at it like that final little bit of light that you're going to get. Okay? So a good Nadika is important, and this is the story of Nadikas. I always knew something had to exist where you divided the day into 60 parts. Because in astrology, the 60 part of the whole is in everything. And we have a Hora Lagna, right? Which is the Lagna based on dividing the Vara into 60 parts. Then we have a Gatika Lagna, which is another name for Nadi. So we have a Nadika Lagna, which is dividing the Vara into 60 parts. but in this Muhurta, every Muhurta book talks about horas. No one talked about a Nadika with that, or a Gati. And I'm like, gosh, there has to be a book that gives the results of the Gati from Muhurta. And I didn't find it anywhere. And then I wrote a friend of mine, Gary Gomes, that had me work on this Muhurta book. He said, oh, what about Nadikas? He goes, have you know about Nadikas? I'm like, I know they exist, but I can't find anything on them. I've been looking for them. And he goes, so then he told me that he emailed me the story of the Nadika, and he said that he must have, well, I'll tell the joke in a second, but the story of the Nadikas is this, is that Venus is actually considered Shukra, the Deva, or the Guru of the Asuras, of the demons. In many ways, is always more noble, intelligent, wise than Guru, the Deva, or the Guru of the Devas, okay? And personally, I'd rather sleep with Venus than Jupiter any day, so Venus always comes out as a better person, even though Jupiter lots of times wins. But there's one story where Indra decided to plant a forest. And he had, his Guru Brihaspati, Jupiter, find a Muhurta. And he did it on the good everything under the Abhijit Nakshatra, which is the Nakshatra, and the forest burnt down. And so Indra went and complained, my forest burnt down, like one of Carol's clients here. My forest burnt down. And he goes, what happened? Indra said, well, with the several types of ills created by the Lord, it's no surprise your forest burnt down. Meaning shit happens. Fancy ways of saying shit happens, But then he went to Shukra and he said, why did my forest burn down? He goes, well, even though Brihaspati chose a good Muhurta and a good Nakshatra and Abhijit and all that, he said he didn't find a good Nadika. You planted your forest during the burning Nadika on a Tuesday. So that's why your forest burned down. So it's quite interesting. And I've seen these Nadikas, they do indicate a specific result that invariably happens. And if you go a little further...
That's pretty important.
Yeah, and I'll tell you why. It says it is important. Nadikas during the sun's Vara.
Right.
For each Nadika, it gives a different result. So for each Vara, each Nadika gives a different result.
Right.
And again, the 1st and 31st Nadika give the same result. The 2nd and 32nd. They give a specific result, which happens, but if it's a bad result, like loss through quarrels and disputes, it's only going to be a significant, noticeable loss if your panchanga and everything's in bad shape.
Right.
If everything else in good shape, your loss in disputes is you lost $10 on the way home from dinner. Big deal. You know what I mean? And the Nadika is named after Nakshatra, so it's going to have a similar effect as the Nakshatra. And it can compensate for bad Nakshatra.
Nadika, if I am right, it is actually Sanskrit word, it means Nadi, that means vein.
Yeah, exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
So if that is, okay, so that
Means rain?
No,
vein.
vein.
But it means more, not this like this vein, but more the energetic veins, like the acupuncture meridians.
Oh.
Okay, so nadis, nadi literally means like a hollow tube, like a tube or something. But usually it's used in the context of an energetic tube, for like the acupuncture meridians. But it's this kind of vein too. It's any kind of vein. And the more modern name for nadi is gati. And a gati is a tool or a machine that works with water. And the reason they started calling it that, because they used to have these water clocks that measured the nadis using water. So then nadi started being called gati. So in any modern literature, by modern I mean 1500 years or so, they almost will always call it a gati. Like in any book you get on astrology, it'll say gati.
And then
G-H-A-T-I. It's the same thing as a nadi. That's what we call it Gatika Lagna, when it's really a Nadika Lagna, but Gati has been a term that's been used for easily 2,000 years. Surya Siddhanta is very old, but Gati is a more common term than Nadi. But I like the Nadi because it gives a more deeper meaning of what it is, Okay, so if the Nadika, if the Nakshatra of the Nadika,
I lost track.
103. If that's a favorable nakshatra for the event, that can help overcome the problems of a nakshatra that's not favorable for an event. Okay? Also, the Nadika has a lord, just like the Hora does. The Sun through Saturn, one of the 7 planets that rule each Nadika. So a good Nadika can also help a good Vara, a bad Vara, or a bad Hora. To some degree, But again, like I said, the Nadika has a lot to do on the final outcome. And so I just try to make sure the Nadika Lord's good, and then the special results, try to get a special result that's, first of all, not contrary to the result you want. So if, disrupts journeys, well, that's a contrary indication, right?
Right.
So if you're not journeying, that doesn't mean that's a good Nadika. It still could disrupt you on the way to the post office, okay? So you want to be funny. And like I said, sometimes these are funny. Like I bought a laser printer on a Nadika that said I was going to get money. Does that mean I created something and sold it and made money? It could have. I could have made a lot of money printing for you guys for 20 cents a copy maybe. Or who knows what it was, so it's sometimes hard to know how the Nadika actually works out just by the name, but that result will be in there somewhere. So try to get a Nadika that has a good result, and it's even better if the Nadika is exactly the results you want anyway. Like Nadika 16 on Sunday promotes construction of cities and houses. Well, geez, so if you were going to build a house on that Nadika, it'd be especially great,
But 16th will be a Rohini Nadika. How can it be great?
16th will be a Rohini Nadika.
So look at the Lord of Rohini.
The moon.
So how can it be great for building?
Oh, okay. No, the 16th Nadika is actually ruled by Mars. So the Nadika lords are not the Nakshatra lords.
So 16 is, according to mine, is Rohini, no?
Right.
Yeah, that's their Nakshatra.
Or Nakshatra.
But the lord of the Nadi
Where is the Nadi? Is
on 103.
So
the 7 planets are
16
the lords
is
of the
Mars.
Nadi.
Or Sunday Mars.
Yeah. Mars rules the 16th Nadi on
Sunday. So it's different on different days.
So you can see how that could be good for, Mars rules buildings.
I see.
And the sun is fixed, right?
But Nadi, so Nakshatra is bad, Nadi is
What's
good.
wrong with Rohini?
Rohini is because of moon.
No, Rohini is a good nakshatra for construction. It's a fixed nakshatra.
Oh.
Right?
Okay.
Okay. So you want to try to get the Nadika with the nakshatra that's favorable, a Nadika that has a nice end. But the easy way to use them, important way to use them, try to see if the result is a good result, and if it's in favor of the event, so much the better. And I try to, most importantly, the Nadika Lord needs to be well disposed. And the Nadika Lord is not the Nakshatra Lord. It's the Lord of the Nadi based on the 7 planets, just like the Horus.
Just one little clarification here. Nadika doing 16 promotes construction of cities and houses. Stroke 46. So what is 46?
46 means that's the 46th Nadika as well. Because the 30 Nadikas repeat themselves.
Right.
So the 16th and 46th will give the same result. And the 15th and 30th. See?
So 46 will occur when?
That will be beginning of the last fourth of the day.
Oh.
Yeah, because it's 60, right? So
Right.
first 30 for the first 12 hours of the day,
Right.
and the next 30 for the next 12 hours of the day.
Right.
Okay?
So that will fall sometime early morning part.
That will sometimes fall in the
Very
early
early
morning,
Right.
from Yamakoki, okay? So the Nadikas are pretty simple to use, okay? Pretty easy to use.
What's going to start early in the morning?
This 46 Nadika. No, don't worry about it.
Oh.
Don't worry about it, okay? Let's go to these case studies and look at some of the Nadikas, okay? What's that?
I thought you said it was late in the afternoon. Didn't you say it was late in the afternoon?
I meant morning, late in the evening, in the night, early morning. Okay, let's look at some of these Nadikas, some of these big events, okay? Let's look at the Nadika for the Titanic, okay? I've already seen at the Panchanga that the Titanic's doomed, right? So let's see what the Nadika says. Where's that Nadika? The Nadika is Ashwini, which is affects favorable to commence education. Well, it's a good Nadika at least, right? But it's not really, has anything to do with travel, does it?
Where are you?
352. You can just listen. The Nadika is Ashwini.
Okay.
Okay? You don't have to read it. And the effects of Ashwini on this Vara, which was Tuesday, is favorable to commence education. Okay? So, at least it's a good Nadika, right? But it's not one that has anything to do with travel. Okay?
I'm just trying to figure out how you figured out that Ashwini was a certain number.
Why is that Nadika?
Yeah.
Oh, because we just calculated it. I mean, it was calculated on the computer. But that would mean on a Tuesday, or Ashwini is like the, around the 14th Nadika of any day.
Okay.
So it's right around noontime you'll find it. So if you go down to the Nadika, let's see.
Nice, it's the 13th.
Ashwini is the 13th, yeah.
Okay.
Nadika. See that? So it was the 13th Nadika when it took off. Now, Ashwini is favorable traveling, and the Nadika is not bad, so it looks good. But what's interesting, Ashwini, it's the month of Chaitra, so you can use all these Muhurta parts together. In the month of Chaitra, Ashwini is the empty nakshatra. You got it?
Mm-hmm.
So that means anything related to Ashwini is not going to be good during the month of Chaitra. So it's actually not going to be a good Nadika either. Okay? So, and then you can put these together. Now, if we look at the spirit of St. Louis.
So you have to look at that also for here.
I do, yeah. Yeah, if Ashwini is a bad nakshatra in any way, then it'll be a bad Nadika.
Okay, in that I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
But in this particular case, you said Ashwini was bad because...
In the month of Chaitra, Ashwini is the Shunya nakshatra.
And that would come up under doshas, right? If you do the Muhurta on the computer.
That
and you
actually, in my computer, where it says month, it'll tell you the Shunya nakshatra. Where it says Tithi, it'll tell you the Shunya Tithi.
Okay.
Where it says, it'll always tell you if it's a Shunya.
Okay.
It'll tell you that, but you have, or you can look it up in the books
So
or in
if
the
it was Shunya
chapters.
in any way, if
Page
it was a
66.
nakshatra, whatever the
That's a bad
case
Tithi or
then it's always
nakshatra.
across the board.
Yeah, I mean, a Shunya Tithi is going to be bad. Boom.
And nakshatra
But
can
I'm
be
saying
Shunya too?
this is a Shunya...
And so can a Rashi.
And then it's bad.
It's empty. Doesn't give any good results, only bad.
Like in page 66 it tells.
Yeah.
Also, should-
Always avoid those shunyas. So since this is a shunya, it's not a shunya nadika, but since a shwini is bad in the month of Chaitra, the nadika shwini will also be bad. Shwini is bad during the month of Chaitra. Okay? Alright. All these things relate together due to time. Based on the time, the tithi, the month, different things take on a different nature. So you might go, gosh, this is a great planet, it's in a shwini. Well, if you're born in the month of Chaitra, it's going to suffer a blow because it's in a shwini. Okay? Now, the moon especially is bad in that nakshatra, but that nakshatra in general is not going to be favorable during that month for anything. Okay? Like my wife has Jupiter in a shwini. She's born in the month of Chaitra, and her Jupiter dasha totally sucked. Okay?
No good.
No good. It was empty.
Jupiter.
Her Jupiter dasha was not very good, no.
Huh.
Yeah. Wasn't until Saturn that she met me. Okay. So, those shunyas are always important. We'll eventually do a class with birth charts and all those time things, and that'll really help you because it'll reiterate all the Muhurta stuff, but also help you see things on the birth charts. Okay? All right, let's look at Spirit of St. Louis. Go ahead.
So in this case, when you're looking at something like that, those are the only two things that can affect, right? If you have a particular nakshatra that's bad, it's only the Nadika and that nakshatra that it's going to affect. You don't have to cross-reference it anywhere.
No, it's only the nakshatra and the Nadika. Yeah. Okay, now the Spirit of St. Louis, the Nadika was a shwini. Okay? And this was it wasn't a bad month, and it was a good Nadika. Now shwini on, what was that bar? Friday. So let's see what a shwini, which is the 13th Nadika, does on Friday. Promotes commencing education again.
Sorry to be ignorant, what is the spirit of St. Louis?
Spirit of St. Louis was the first plane to fly across the Atlantic Ocean.
Oh, I don't know.
Remember?
Charles Lindbergh.
I don't know.
Flag.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that's kind of a big deal here. So it promotes commencing education. And so let's look at that. That's what that Nadika was good when he took off on the plane. As a result of him making that journey, he became a prominent, he went all over talking about aerodynamics and aeronautics and all that stuff. So he basically became a teacher of that as a result of that. Isn't that sort of cool? You know? So somehow that set him up to educate other people, and he would give advice to the air forces of different countries, not, Germany and everyone. Okay? And, so he did educate people as a result of making that flight. So isn't that cool how the Nadika has this little bit of there? They're a lot of fun. I think they're one of the funnest things we can do. Then if we look at the Nadika of, let's look at the first Columbia, what the Nadika was there. The Nadika's a Srini again. What's up with this? Okay? So that's good, right? The Nadika helps support things a little bit. Remember how bad that chart was? That first shuttle launch had all those bad things? Well, the Nadika was good. Oh, the Vara was Sunday. So what's Sunday and a Srini give us? Promotes activities related to quadruped.
It should be animals.
Yeah, well, that's sort of interesting. Yeah, well, not necessarily. Quadrupeds would also be vehicles these days, I think, like cars.
Okay.
Because back then a quadruped was your vehicle for a large part, So now we have, and they have horsepower, right? Everything's measured in horsepower. So, the shuttle's not a quadruped though, right? And so, in some ways, this would not be an ideal Nadika for going up to space, right? You would, because quadrupeds are used for roaming on the planet, on Earth, And so until they get horses in space, maybe not so get a horse in space.
Or maybe this is about like putting monkeys in space instead of us.
But monkeys are bipeds.
Oh, they are?
Yeah. And on Earth's flight, it was humans going up. So I think that it's not a favorable Nadika as far as the results concerned, but it's not a bad one. It at least does something beneficial. But it's not a Nadika that would promote getting off the ground. Okay? Let's look at the Columbia shuttle crash this year. The Nadika was the Nadika was Mag, which is not good for travel, but not bad on Jupiter's Vara. Okay, so it's like the neutral Nadika. It's not good for traveling, because Mag is not good for traveling. And Mag on Thursday,
What number? 22.
yeah, it's supposed to give gains.
Was it 22 or 50?
So what is the
Positional
Nadika?
strength is what I, oh wait, oh what?
Okay. So the Nadika
Jupiter?
on Jupiter's Vara, the 10th Mag. Oh, wasn't the 10th?
No, it's 12, 22, positional strength.
Oh yeah, okay, great, thank you. Positional strength. Thank you. Well, you don't see how that really relates to the shuttle, right? Positional strength. That would be good if you were going to have a war, right? So you can hold your position, or if you got elected with positional strength to hold you up there. But for something like that, it just wasn't a good Nadika for travel. This is a good Nadika, but not bad. The only thing we can say as a result of this, it's not going to change anything about the space shuttle program. It's not going to make them say, ooh, we can't do more space shuttles. It's just they're going to maintain what they're doing. Okay?
Like that's when they discovered the O-rings, the things that were causing.
No, this was the one this year.
Oh, I was looking at the Columbia.
Yeah, now we'll look at the next one. The Challenger, which was the one in 86.
I thought that was, oh, maybe we got the names mixed up. The Columbia was, yeah, you're right, sorry. Challenger.
Okay, Nadika is Uttar Falguni, which is a mediocre nakshatra for travel. The Nadika Lord was afflicted, and was combust, and Rashi aspected in the Navamsha by Saturn and Mars. So the Nadika can't really help. Now, the Vara on that day was...
Amos, happiness and journeys.
Okay, good example. Perfect.
Yeah.
That's just because...
Is it Venus?
Well, I don't know. Are you just saying? Let me look it
No,
up.
I just don't make it up.
That's a good one. Okay, it's Mars's Vara. Tuesday, Mars's Vara
Two.
with Uttar Falguni Nadika. So,
24. Victory over enemies.
and that was on Mars's. Victory over enemies? Okay. So this is the one in 86. So, can't relate to anything. The only thing I would assume, there would have been a lot of pressure against them for not ignoring the warnings, etc. So I'm sure there would have been people out to get certain people, but they probably got off fine because this Nadika would help them overcome any negative things directed to them by people after the explosion.
So nobody was pinned.
But so it would support the people who made the mistakes. Because of course, anytime something like that happens, there's lawsuits, there's blame, right? So a lot of time the Nadika won't really relate to the event that much, or it might take a while to see where it comes in. It always comes in somewhere, but lots of times you just have to wait and see. Like Charles Lindbergh, it had nothing to do with his flight. Just that flight set him up to have this to educate people. So they're fun to watch, but they won't always relate to the exact event. And like anything else, the most important thing is make sure the Nadika Lord is in good shape. But again, it's a fine detail thing. If someone else had set off, 40 minutes before Lindbergh with the same Vara, Tithi, Nakshatra, and Lagna, same doshas and same everything, and made the flight, the results of that would have been different because the Nadika would have been different. Is how we look at it. But they still would have both made the journey. Okay?
Wow.
So, these you can use these. I usually resort to them if I can't get a good nakshatra. Then I try to really pay attention to them, try to compensate for the bad nakshatra. And I always try to avoid a bad nadika where possible and try to get a good one. And sometimes I'm lucky and I can actually get one that is actually really favorable for the event. Like, they're going on a travel and it says gains through traveling. It's like, oh good, that's exactly what we want. When you get a nadika like that, that's specific to the event, then you can really expect that Nadika to give the fruits of that event. So, like in Lindbergh's case, had a good Nadika, favorable for education, right? The result came, but not in the context of that event. If he had a nakshatra favorable for journeys, it would have happened in the context of that event. So, if the Nadika relates to the context of the event, you can expect to get the fruits of the Nadika during the event. Okay? If it doesn't relate to it, you can somehow expect that event to somehow bring that into your life somehow.
How can you sometimes figure it out? Say, for instance, if you're looking at it, say there's an expedition going up, and that expedition's purpose is to discover something, and they do discover, say Mars, they discover life, but on the way back, they collapse, everything explodes. So if you're looking as an astrologer, and they are the spirit is there to discover something out of ordinary.
Yeah.
And they going in, you see in here that this says they discover something, but you see the result is bad.
Yeah.
How do you think that will be a detrimental for the entrepreneurial spirit as an astrologer point of view?
It'll be detrimental to what?
Entrepreneurial spirit.
If you predict that?
Yeah.
Not usually, because the entrepreneurial spirit's going to do it anyway. But,
You see my question?
It can be detrimental, depends on the person.
So what's he asking?
He's asking if you tell people you're going to find something, but the end will be a disaster,
Okay.
if that's detrimental. And,
No, you may
Good result will
you
come
may
from it when you
you
discover
may
it.
deter something which can be something very, very out of ordinary. You can say, oh, you don't travel now because you see the result is ending.
yeah.
But there's some sort of nakshatra in the beginning part of when they're going towards the moon, they have a very nice aspect.
Well, see, the chart would show lots of things. It would show you're gonna go on your journey. you're going to accomplish your mission, but there's going to be death and destruction.
Ah,
You know what I mean?
right.
So now they can have the choice, well, geez, am I willing to, you know, to pay the price of death and destruction for accomplishing my mission?
Yes.
You know, then they can decide. That's how I would tell it to them.
Right.
I said, what this is going to cost you is this, you know, and they can decide what they want to do.
But you will be in the books of history. That's all.
Well, the astrologer wouldn't be, he'll get deleted.
So,
For sure.
you wouldn't use a Nadika to compensate, you still want to have a combination, a nakshatra or whatever combination.
Yeah, try to get a good-
Good nakshatra,
Mhm.
and the Nadika wouldn't be enough.
It's not going to do so much. Nautica is like a little bit of, it's detail. It's a small part, it adds the final
So if you
detail.
had nakshatra, you still need to have a combination that's going to have something with a nakshatra.
Yeah, if you have a bad Nadika, but your Panchanga is good and your Vartiti Nakshatra Yoga is good, the bad Nadika is not going to burn your forest all by itself.
Right, but I'm saying if you have a bad nakshatra.
A good Nadika won't make up for it all by itself. But, you know, with Mukherjee, it's trying to just make it as good as possible. So if you have no choice and you just can't find a good nakshatra, and it's not going to form a good yoga, but it has to be done anyway, then find a good Nadika. Mukherjee gets hard when you can't find a good Panchanga. If you can find a good Panchanga, Mukherjee is easy. But if you can't find a good Panchanga, then it gets hard. So I say, so at first, don't even recommend events unless the Panchanga is good. And then after you find a good Panchanga, find the best Lagna with the least amount of doshas and the most amount of alleviations of doshas. And stop there. And then if it gets to where none of those are possible, then you have to decide, are you really willing to work with these little things, horror, Nadika, pay more attention to the Navamsha Lagna and all those things? Or do you just want to say, hey, I'll just see you next year for another Mukherjee? You know, so for the start, you should just concentrate on the Panchanga, the Vartiti Nakshatra yogas, the blemishes, and the blemish removers. That's it. And if you can't get those, you probably shouldn't recommend the event. Okay?
Wow.
Until you get comfortable with doing that, and then you take the next step into, gosh, you know. But maybe if we get this Navamsha Lagna, it'll be just enough to pull off the event and make it work, even though everything else sucks. You know what I mean? But again, you never do anything with a bad Vartiti Nakshatra yoga. Stay away from those guys. All right. You know, I try to avoid those.